Hello, and thank you, Bryce. Well, let me also add a warm welcome from the two of us, and welcome to the State of European Tech 2022. So, you saw that video just now, and I referred to a breakthrough moment for the European tech ecosystem back in 2015. And I was referring to just $10 billion of investment, our first few $100 billion of ecosystem value, 35 unicorns ever, and getting to that point felt huge. And now we're counting ecosystem value in the trillions. We are counting unicorns in their hundreds. So I think being on this stage today really makes me realize how far we've come. So whether you're here with us at BAFTA or you're one of the thousands of people that have joined us live down the line, thank you so much for joining us.
The State of European Tech is a resource for the entire ecosystem, but it also takes the whole ecosystem to work together to create this report. So thank you to the many collaborators who help us bring this to life. Our report partners, without whom today's event wouldn't have been possible, Oric, Lazard, Silicon Valley Bank UK, and Slush, your support is invaluable. Our data and distribution partners, whose insights make this the definitive resource for the European tech community. And to the thousands and thousands of you who took the time to help us build the largest dataset on sentiment about European tech, thank you. Your insights were key to help us unlock the story behind the headline numbers. Now, this is our 8th State of European Tech. It is also the first year that the numbers haven't all been up and to the right. This year, we knew we would tell a very different story. And to do that, we needed to understand how the shift has affected founders, investors, and everyone working in tech across Europe. How they felt, how they've adapted, and how they see the future. Now, I would love to walk you through all of the data that we gathered, but we also know that you want to get out of here before Christmas. So today, we're sharing just a small fraction of the more than 450 charts that you will find in the report.
There's no escaping it's been a difficult year, from soaring inflation and interest rate hikes, the energy crisis, and of course the horrifying war in Ukraine. We're facing the most challenging macro environment since the global financial crisis. But it's also our opportunity to build, shape, and invest in the future. In fact, opportunities like this come around only once in a generation. So, should we get into it?
Yes. 2022 is a tale of two halves. We witnessed a record-breaking first half of the year with investment levels still riding high after 2021. Over the summer, however, the ecosystem began to cool off as the caution that we've all observed and felt started to show in the data. In Q3, investment levels fell by 40%, continuing into Q4, and now 2022 is set to be down 18% year on year. But overall, when we look at total investment into European tech, things still look good. This will still stand at around $85 billion by the end of 2022. That is double the figure from just 2 years ago. Now, other measures offer further insight into the visible impact of changes to the macro environment. We've seen $400 billion of value raised from public and private European tech companies in the past 12 months. The total ecosystem value has fallen to $2.7 trillion from its $3.1 trillion peak in late 2021. But that still leaves $2 trillion of value created since just 2015.
IPOs were virtually non-existent this year. Europe saw just $2 billion flotations versus 25 in 2021. Of course, the same trend has been seen globally, with a 30 times reduction year on year. M&A also slowed down, although if you look at the Q3 numbers, there's some signs of recovery. And this will clearly be the main path to exit until the public markets reopen. And layoffs abound. Founders are under pressure to grow sustainably and faced with the painful decision to reduce headcounts. Globally, more than 200,000 tech workers have been laid off this year already, and European tech companies represent 7% of this. And of course, all of this is having an impact on the challenge of raising money. Even at the best of times, this is never a simple process. Today, 82% of founders say it's harder to raise funding this year than a year ago. And it remains especially challenging for diverse founding teams. Capital is still overwhelmingly going to men-only founding teams, despite some signs of positive progress at the earlier stages.
The data confirms what we've all witnessed. The market has shifted, and with it, expectations are reset. In 2021, capital was cheap and abundant, and today, as the cost of capital has increased, a growth at all cost mindset is no longer viable. Not surprisingly, the volume of $100 million rounds is down compared to 2021, despite a record-breaking level in the first half of the year. It's now taking longer for founders to raise money, and often the result is going back to existing investors for bridge rounds. Founders are speaking to more investors, encountering deeper due diligence, and having to accept tougher terms. And compared to last year's 105 new billion-dollar firms, we're now back to pre-2021 levels, with 31 unicorns born in 2022. But in fact, we're left net negative, with at least 45 of the previously created unicorns dehorned this year. This is most obvious for listed companies, with the instant feedback of the public markets bringing valuations down. But in the private markets, more forced fundraisers in a very different valuation environment means that we're likely to see more down rounds next year.
So it's a new reality, and it means hard decisions for almost everyone, founders, investors, and talent. But it's just half the story. We've actually emerged from the process of writing this report feeling more optimistic about the long-term European opportunity. And most of you watching today already agree. Almost 8 in 10 people who took our survey say they're more or just as optimistic about the future of European tech as last year. Because real success for the sector is less about the glamour of short-term valuations and capital market dynamics, and much more about talent, innovation, and long-term company building. The crucial pieces of this puzzle are firmly in place. Now, the data we've shown you is a reaction to the macro landscape, and that's still being shaped by geopolitical instability, the changes in monetary policies we talked about, and the energy crisis. The importance of technology has not and will not change, nor has our reliance on tech or its ability to improve our lives. Yes, down cycles hit short-term consumer spending and certain types of investment, but they don't fundamentally change how technology is transforming the way we live and work. Digitization brings about gradual but permanent shifts in the way that people and businesses behave. And these ultimately are the types of massive, long-term, trillion-dollar trends that underpin the opportunity for entrepreneurship and technology. And it's not just about our innate desire for smarter tech. The broader environment reminds us of the transformational power of technology to solve meaningful problems. The energy crisis, the climate crisis are front of mind for all of us. The need for sustainable solutions to those is more urgent than ever. We have an opportunity, and there's continued evidence that Europe is most ready to meet it. Investment levels in purpose-driven tech come very close to 2021's record-breaking amounts. Our proportion of investment in purpose-driven companies continues to be higher than the US and Asia, who are both sharply decreasing investment. And European tech benefits from a more experienced talent base than we might think. Almost 4 in 10 founders aren't first-timers. That rises to 6 in 10 for unicorn founders. And there's already some experience of down cycles baked in. Most companies have members of their founding and leadership teams that have operated through prior downturns. So they've learned how to do more with less, how to maintain perspective. And we will now build this knowledge into a whole new generation who will emerge stronger as a result, embedding more grit and more resilience into the ecosystem.
The European tech ecosystem, as we know it, is barely 20 years old. And in that time, we've matured at an incredible rate. We benefit from a diverse set of experienced, long-term oriented and committed investors. Saying goodbye to the tourists can be beneficial as founders draw from long-term, supportive capital. And dry powder is still plentiful. There are record levels of venture capital funds raised, ready to be invested in Europe's most resilient companies. The pillars of our ecosystem are strong, but they are being tested. And looking forward, we have a generational opportunity to deliver inspired solutions to the problems that Europe and the whole world face. One of our most forward-looking indicators is early-stage funding. It gives us the clearest insights into the companies of tomorrow. And this is on par with the US. In fact, European startups account for 31% of all capital invested globally. This is quite remarkable. And the talent founding those startups is stronger than ever. Our talent flywheel tracks the rate at which talent is redeployed from one generation of companies to the next. You've all heard of the Skype and Spotify mafia. Well, now we're measuring the Adyen, Wise, and Klarna alumni. It's clear that the flywheel is accelerating. Today, the 2010s unicorn cohort has led to 30 times more founders than the one from just a decade ago. That means more founders and more experience of operating at scale. It's the greatest pipeline of talent that we've ever had.
So we can't fully predict the journey ahead, but the data allows for strong conviction on some important points. The challenging macro environment will persist, but we must remember that volatility is just a temporary phenomenon. The European ecosystem is strong and will continue to deepen and strengthen its resolve. On every metric, even in a down year, we're far stronger than just a few years ago. And with less froth and the consolidation that comes from a downturn, Europe has the opportunity to focus resources on technologies that solve meaningful problems and therefore have the greatest chance of success. If there's one thing we've learned in curating the state of European tech, it's that we tend to overstate the importance of the here and now. By its very nature, technology is forward-looking. Markets are cyclical. The ambition of our ecosystem isn't and should never be tied to the capital markets alone. We must think in decades, not quarters. 8 years ago, when we started this report, we sensed what was possible. But if anything, we completely underestimated the transformation that was underway and the value that was being created in the process. So just imagine what's possible 8 years from now. More change is inevitable. Reinvention and revitalization is not only possible, it's necessary. And it's times like these that put things in motion. The greatest companies persist, they keep pushing, or they pivot when required, and they find ways through the challenges and become essential in our lives. And they endure, creating immense value in the process. We're here today, but we are building ultimately for tomorrow. And tomorrow needs our energy, our grit, creativity, and courage today to create those new breakthroughs. Thank you.